Welcome to Toxicology, brought to you by Recovery Unplugged, the place where we talk about all things substance abuse, recovery, and mental health, with guests offering varying perspectives and viewpoints. Hosts Joseph Gordo and Jason Cabello share about their addiction and recovery and other serious subject matter through lighthearted yet candid conversation. 3.
You want me to, like intro?
Yeah.
Like intro. Okay. My first impulse was to start counting out loud for you, like you wanted me to count, like 2, 1. Okay.
All right.
Do you want to do that again? Or?
No. We're live.
All right. Well, hi, and welcome to another episode of Toxicology, the first episode of Toxicology in our new format.
A reintroduction.
Yeah, a reintroduction. I am your host, Joseph Gordo, LCDC, and this is my good friend, Jason Cabello. Say hi, Jason.
Hi, Jason.
Ooh.
This is definitely different. It's going to take some adjusting, but this is us. This is it.
This is what we're doing. And, I think that to new listeners, we should probably fill them in on some of the deep lore of toxicology and how it came to be, right?
Gather round, children.
Gather round, children. It was a dark and stormy night. No, it wasn't. Well, I mean, I don't recall the weather.
I've had some dark, stormy nights.
I don't recall the weather, but we were in a meeting and somebody brought up the idea of doing a live stream conversation about a TV show, right?
Well, let's go a little bit further back than that. Joseph and I
used to do drugs.
Joseph and I work for Recovery Unplugged, which is a drug and alcohol treatment center, which also deals with mental health, people with mental health struggles now.
Yes,
correct.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Joseph and I have been coworkers. We both, like I said, work for Recovery Unplugged. I do all the video and a lot of the content, and Joseph is
my new title is Senior Vice President of Operations and Outreach, Texas.
Big shot.
God, I'm the guy in charge.
He is the buff guy in charge. But yeah, so we work for a drug and alcohol treatment center.
Yeah.
Both of us are people in recovery ourselves.
Long-term recovery.
Yeah. I'm getting there.
Yeah.
So
I think 6 is good. 6 you can
6
say
years
long-term.
Is good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so we work for Recovery Unplugged, and a show, Dope Sick, came out about 8 months ago, 7-8 months ago.
Yeah, I want to say like September 2021.
September 2021, the show Dope Sick came out, which is a drama about the pill mill and essentially how the pharmaceutical company was a huge part in the opioid crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started doing sort of like a wrap-up show or like a wrap-up show. We had some Q&A. We had some people on.
We had some fancy people.
Some
normal people.
Some people who, our good friend Lisa Pascarosa, whose son died of an overdose a couple of years back. She was on, got to tell her story about it. So, we had a wide array of guests.
Yes.
And then once the show ended, we had some feedback saying, hey, we like this, we like the format. We like to be able to tune in once a week and get some chit-chat, hear some chit-chat, be part of it.
Yeah.
And then just a constant evolution of things. Now we are doing it in a podcast studio. And for the time being, it looks like we're not going to be doing a live stream anymore.
Aww. So, I mean, okay, I'm sad to see the live stream go. Probably just because I don't like change, which is pretty common with people in recovery. But I'm glad to not be bound to that schedule anymore.
Right.
Because I am unreliable.
So I on more than one occasion, I've hosted by myself, as Joseph has too. I
think like once.
But once, and I usually give, a good 2 weeks notice if I'm not going to be able to make it. Joseph sometimes will text me
2 minutes.
2 minutes before air and say, oh shit, I'm a terrible person. Good luck though.
Yeah.
And
now, Jason, you may not know this, but Toxicology is actually the second podcast that I've been a part of.
Do tell.
The first one was a short-lived podcast started at the height of the pandemic that featured my wife and her best friend Miranda.
Right, I remember that.
And I don't remember. It was called Miffed. It was Miffed. And they basically just talked about things that they liked and things that they didn't like.
Okay, so you're a professional broadcaster.
Absolutely. Yeah, Walter Cronkite ain't got nothing on me.
Okay. So this is the new face of toxicology.
Yeah.
We hope you like it. We hope you tune in. And we usually will have guests. Maybe sometimes we won't. So it's kind of free form. This was kind of, we had a couple of cancellations today on short notice. So,
because I'm not the only unreliable person.
Well, that's good. At least, misery loves company.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's, for the people who haven't seen the live broadcast and know anything about you, let's hear a little bit about Joseph
we're gonna do
Corrado.
me again.
A little bit
Okay.
of Joseph Corrado.
All right. Yeah. So, I was conceived on the campus of St. Edward's University here in Austin, Texas. No, we can cut that later, right?
We can cut that.
Yeah, we can cut that later. Maybe we won't. I don't know. My mom listens. Maybe she won't listen.
Well, she
anymore.
probably remembers.
She might not. She's forgotten that. But no. So I'm a person in long-term recovery. You know, my story is not super unique. I started experimenting with alcohol and drugs probably a little earlier than most people. You know, between kind of the ages of 10 and 12 is when I first started to dabble. And I think in high school it became clear that I partied a little bit harder than everybody else.
Okay.
Quick story on that. I remember one year, it was spring break, and we were on South Padre Island, which is where you go for spring break in Texas.
And this was like junior year, senior year?
Junior year, so 2001.
Okay, wow. You're young.
Oh, yeah, real young. So we somehow ended up at this condo, and there was about 20 of us staying in this condo. And I remember one morning I woke up and I rolled a big fat joint. First thing, and I didn't want to smoke alone. And I went around this condo, waking everyone up one by one and asking them to go smoke a joint with me. And all of the other 19 people in the condo turned me down. And so, I don't know, for me, like looking back, it's very like, wow, like you were on spring break.
Had some drugs.
Had some drugs in the party capital of Texas with a bunch of people who were there to party as well. And you're smoking a joint by yourself because nobody else wanted to get down like that.
A little foreshadowing of how dark it's going to get.
Yeah, a little bit. And so, my addiction progressed kind of along the standard lines, right? Alcohol, weed, a little bit of pills, a little bit of mushrooms. And then as soon as I got out of high school, made the jump to cocaine, little consumption.
Okay, so you weren't doing hard drugs yet when you were in high school, but you were partying a little bit longer than the rest of your crew.
Yeah, well, I think I had a different goal than the rest of the crew.
Right.
My goal was oblivion. It was numbness. I wasn't trying to, have a drink to talk to the girls or get some liquid confidence. Like my goal was to get fucked up.
Okay.
From the very beginning, pretty much. So out of high school, got into the harder drugs, cocaine, and then eventually heroin, which heroin was a drug I was going to try one time just to be able to say that I had tried it.
Oh, okay.
And that's the one that really took me down.
Instantly? Did you know that this was not going to be the last time, the first time you did it?
No.
No? Okay.
No, I fully intended. Now, that was a dark and stormy night. I remember the power went out like 10 minutes after I did heroin for the first time.
Okay, another omen.
Yeah. And you want to hear another omen? My roommate at the time, this guy, Sammy, he was into huffing carburetor fluid. And he huffed enough carburetor fluid to have some hallucinations. And he actually ended that night in the middle of the street on his knees yelling at the sky because the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse were riding down on him.
How much carburetor fluid do you need to huff to start seeing?
I don't know.
Did you never did that? No. I didn't either. That's one thing that I've yet to experience.
Inhalants are very popular in Mexico and South Texas. But no, not my thing either.
Okay.
Anyway, so heroin takes me down. The first day I didn't think it was a problem, but it became an okay thing to do every couple weeks. And then when I had my first friend die of an OD, that was when I just kind of decided this is what we're doing now. You know?
Oh, okay. So your friend dying of an overdose solidified like I'm in this now?
Yeah.
Okay, because usually one would think
Well,
that would be the point where you're like, maybe this isn't something I want to follow and chase, but you decided like I'm all in.
yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing with like, you know, people talk about like the difference between someone who uses a lot, like a hard user or drinker, versus like the real deal alcoholic addict.
Right.
And I think that decision there is kind of indicative of how that difference is for me, right? And what I mean by that is the average person, you know, has someone close to them die or themselves overdose and has that kind of brush with death. And to them, it serves as a wake-up call. Whereas for me, like her passing caused so much pain that I had no idea how to manage.
Okay.
That I wanted to, again, feel oblivion, feel nothing in the easiest, most convenient way possible, which was shooting heroin.
Quick and easy, yeah. And it was easily attainable for you, heroin?
When you live on the border of Mexico, heroin is cheap and plentiful.
Man, I was not so lucky.
Yeah, no, I could, very easily accessible.
Okay.
And so, I mean, that kind of teed up the next 6 years, right? So I was in and out of treatment centers, you know, detox at a hospital, you know, 30-day programs here and abroad. You know, I did some nice treatment centers, some not so nice treatment centers. I spent a year in Mexico at a therapeutic community style rehab.
That's a story in and of itself.
Yeah, that's a whole that's like a half-hour explanation of all the odd and eccentric things that happen. And I'm happy to go into that more detail about that if you'd like.
Yeah,
Jason.
We've got some time.
We do have time.
Let's do Reader's Digest version.
Okay, Reader's Digest. So this treatment center in Mexico, just outside of Monterrey.
Where my family is from. Saltillo.
Yeah.
Monterrey.
Regiomontanos. Yeah. Anyway, so this treatment center in Mexico, first off, treatment in Mexico is a little bit different in that your family can sign papers that make you stay there and give the treatment center the authority to force you to stay there.
Do they have nice like espresso machines and like an ice cream cooler?
No. I'm talking like showering with a barrel of water and using like a half-gallon jug to pour water over your head kind of place. It was definitely not luxury, but...
Not the kind of place that if you decided this isn't what you want to do, that you could just pack your bags and say, I'm out of here and leave.
First off, you had no bags.
Okay.
You had three days worth of clothes and flip-flops. At first, when you first get there, you spend at least a month in flip-flops to make it harder for you to run away.
Wow. So, you know, for those who may not be treatment savvy, it's pretty easy if you go into a treatment center because usually you're not mandated to be there by law. Usually you sign yourself in, you could sign yourself out. So it's very common that people show up to rehab and then just leave.
Yeah.
Like this isn't where they want to be. They want to go out there. A lot of rehabs are in metropolitan areas.
Yeah.
So you can just leave and usually find some stuff. There are some that are out there a little bit further to make it a little bit harder, but this sounds like sounds like you're all in. You don't really have the choice to leave. That's not an option.
15-foot walls, barbed wire. Like it was not a place that you could leave. But anyway, so the program there was a year and 15 days long. So you stay your year, you pick up your chip, and then you stay the extra 15 days out of gratitude is the way that they would frame it for you. But it was no therapists.
Okay.
There was only 2 employees. Everybody else was basically a client who had achieved sort of a status within the program, like a trustee. If you've ever been to jail, they had trustees. And the way it worked is you did 10 hours of AA meetings every single day. You had to ask permission to even fart, like legit.
Really?
There was a hand sign like this. You'd make a fist. And whoever was running the 12-step meeting would be like, hey, You can go to the back of the room and fart by the window.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
10 hours of AA every day.
Yes. 10 hours on a wooden bench with your arms crossed, sitting up straight, paying attention.
Shit.
23 hours of silence a day. We had 1 hour that was like rec time that you could like talk and, shoot the shit and do whatever. We had 1 hour that was mandatory reading. You could read the Bible, the big book, or the 12 and 12. And then we had a 1 hour prayer circle kind of time and 2 hours of chores a day. And that was your whole day.
Wow.
Oh, and mandatory exercises. Yeah, mandatory
Okay.
exercise. So I was there for about a year. It was a very well-run treatment center.
About a year.
About a year. Yeah. I ran away at 11 months.
You did?
I did run away.
Oh, you did run away?
Yes.
Shit.
Well, so
you climbed over the wall, or did
No.
you get a little bit more freedom?
I had more freedom.
Okay.
So there was this deal where you could, once you hit a certain level in the program, you could do 3 days out and about every 2 weeks or something like that. And so I was on one of those passes, and it was the day I was supposed to come back, and I just didn't. I hopped a bus into town and showed up at the mall where my uncle owned a shoe store. And I was like, hey, is Bethel here? And they were like, no, he's not. And I was like, will you call him and tell him his nephew's here? And my uncle came and got me, and I was like, I can't go back, dude.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he came and got you?
He came and got me.
There was no questions asked?
I mean, there might have been some questions.
Okay.
But I just, I wasn't going back.
But it was over a year at this point? Or about
11 months.
11 months.
11 months. Yeah.
So you did 11 months. So they're probably like, he's done some nice time there. He's probably put himself together. He's changed.
Yeah. Absolutely. I had a mustache.
You had a mustache.
Different. Yeah.
And how long until you got high again?
3 days.
3 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so here's the thing. So for me, I work a 12-step program of recovery and one based on complete abstinence. That's my personal path. And while I memorized the big book while in this place, and I could quote eloquently different passages of the big book and all that kind of stuff, I never worked any steps at that facility.
Okay.
Partially because we weren't allowed to have pens, because those are weapons.
No pencils? No nothing? No writing utensils?
Nope. You had to have like 6 months sober before you were trusted with a pen.
Okay.
But so I went to go stay with my dad, who is at the time was still a marijuana user, and he would keep it kind of in a little jar by the coffee.
Your dad was living in Mexico?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Still does.
Still does.
Yes. So I was staying with him, and I was miserable. Like you hear people talk about like the spiritual malady and like the ism before the alcohol.
Yes.
The fact was that like my solution, which was alcohol and drugs, I'd been removed from that for a while, but I had never taken the time to put any other solutions in place for, the things that you feel in life, right?
Right. So in Alcoholics Anonymous, they call that being dry, correct?
Yeah, a dry drunk. I was a dry drunk. I had no emotional recovery like they talk about. I just knew how to not get high, but not function as a human in any other way.
Gotcha.
So the second night I was there with him, I really, really, really wanted to get high, but I didn't. Like I was having cravings, but not a desire to use.
You touched your stomach when you said cravings, and that's a feeling that I think most people who have gone through this, they know.
Yeah.
Like, it's this feeling in the pit of your stomach when you feel that thing coming on. Like, it might not be right this second. It might not be tonight.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get high again.
There is some doom impending somewhere,
Dark, stormy night somewhere on the horizon.
Yeah. And so that night, it was probably about 8 o'clock at night. And the only way I knew to not get high was I went to bed. Like I went to sleep.
Yeah.
And I remember I listened to The Kills as I was drifting off to sleep. And then the next morning I woke up, and I think people who aren't in recovery or aren't addicts don't understand this statement. But without thinking, like completely on autopilot, when I woke up the next morning, instead of going and making a pot of coffee, I went and grabbed the weed and smoked a little bit of weed. And it was off to the races again after that, you know. But anyway, so, you know, for 6 years, I did similar things, right? In treatment, out of treatment. 3 days was actually the longest I ever stayed sober outside of a treatment center in that entire time period, until those last 6 months of using. I had managed to put together a life in which I was getting high and nobody knew I was getting high. And I wasn't experiencing any of the external circumstances that happen when you're doing hardcore IV drugs.
Right.
So like I wasn't homeless. I wasn't stealing. I was going to college. I had a job.
Weren't you working at like a bank or something?
I worked at a bank.
Okay.
Yeah. So I never stole, although I did borrow money in the morning to be replaced later.
Right.
Which, I mean, I don't know. Potato.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I was working at a bank. Shout out to Tex-Mex Credit Union. I've made amends to them, so we're cool.
All right.
We're cool.
A credit union too. That's federal, right? If you get caught stealing from there,
I don't know.
I believe it is. Yeah.
But you know, those last 6 months of using, like, you know, like I said, on the outside, everything looked pretty good. You know, I made the dean's list and all kinds of cool stuff. And I was going to 12-step meetings and chairing meetings and actually doing H&Is while high.
It's a lot of fun when you're you're high.
It was interesting.
That used to be one of my favorite things to do, was like go into treatment, get out, get high, and then call all my friends who I wanted them to think that I was doing okay, and then tell them how good recovery is working for me.
Oh man, I used to be on the other end of that, where like I'd be at the dope house and like some random people who we hadn't seen in a while would show up and be like, "We just got out of rehab and we're here to tell you about. We're going to 12-step you. We're going to tell you about the steps." And I mean, I was like, "Well, let me tell you about some drugs. And we'll see who convinces who." Anyway, that's old Joseph. But anyway, yeah. So finally, the last time I went to treatment, you know, I was just done. You know, it wasn't a physical bottom like we hear about a lot. Like it wasn't homelessness or detoxing in jail or loss of relationships or anything like that really was the end for me. For me, the end was getting high the way I wanted to, not experiencing any consequences, and still feeling completely miserable inside. You know?
Yeah, I understand. That feeling, I believe, is just about the same no matter where you are. From, what do they say? From Park Avenue to Park Bench.
Yeah.
It's the same feeling.
Yeah. Basically, the feeling I had in Mexico when I didn't want to get high, that impending doom, it was like the same thing, but I was high and it wasn't going away.
Gotcha.
So I went to treatment one last time, and people always ask, like, especially when I talk to families who are trying to get their loved ones into treatment, you know, and they'll ask me like, well, how did you get sober? What made you finally decide to change? You know, or what was different the last time? It's really just, I followed directions. It's something that you say a lot, right? Like you didn't hear anything that revolutionary the 24th time in treatment.
Correct. Right. It just the perspective was different.
Yeah. And so, I followed directions. You know, I did a lot of what most people do. You know, I went to sober living, I worked the steps, I got a sponsor, and just focused on doing what was the next right thing for me to do. You know, it was always not get high, you know, and then eventually it was like show up to work on time, right? Save your money and pay your rent. It's just little bitty baby steps.
Really quick. Talk about the amenities that they had in the Mexican rehab.
The amenities.
What were the amenities that you had in this rehab in Mexico?
Well, so we all slept in bunk beds that were handmade, just like raw wood planks. Those are we all had the same itchy kind of, you know, those thick
burlap,
like a burlap comforter, basically. And the way it worked is there was only 30 beds, but there were 60 guys. So one group of guys would sleep from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. And then they would get up and make their beds. And 20 minutes later, the next shift of guys would get there and sleep from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Wow.
That was an amenity. We had a pool that we were never allowed to use.
Okay.
Which was nice, I guess.
What about the showers?
The showers. So we had these big, like 50-gallon, like oil drum looking things that were just filled with water. And you got 3 half gallons to dump over your body.
Wow.
To shower with. You had to flush the toilet manually. You'd have to get a little bucket of water and
Okay.
flush it like that.
So why don't we take a moment here to talk about some of the amenities at Recovery Unplugged?
Oh, the amenities are, well, there's indoor plumbing that functions. Your bed is your bed and no one else will be sleeping in it when you are not.
All right, let's try to sell this.
Yeah. I mean, that's depending on where you're coming from. Like being indoors and having a bed, it's pretty nice.
Recovery Unplugged, we're indoors.
And Recovery Unplugged, queen size beds.
Recovery Unplugged, we have facilities in Austin, Texas. In Austin, Texas.
Recovery Unplugged is a nationwide addiction treatment organization which provides all levels of care in Texas, Virginia, Florida, and Tennessee. We are in network with most major insurance companies and provide affordable access to high quality care.
Would you say that Recovery Unplugged can save people's lives, help them with their struggles? Or wait a second, I can, because I was a client at Recovery Unplugged, and look at me now.
You have a life and you have few struggles.
I have a life beyond my wildest dreams.
Oh, even better. With struggles.
That's Recovery Unplugged.
Beep, boop.
Yeah, so in the, I'd been to treatment 20 times. You know this.
Oh, did I add 4 on?
You did add 4 on, so yeah, 20 times. So I don't want to look like some crazy person who takes 24 times to go to treatment. 20 times in treatment. I had the same sponsor. I still have the same sponsor that I had for a lot of years while I was getting high. What's that?
Was that Ralph?
No, John Story. No Ralphs. So Joseph and I have this joke about Ralph from the Sunset Group, and he's the old AA guy who pretty much kept me out of going to AA because I showed up to a couple of AA meetings and been like, raised my hand and been like, I'm dope sick. I don't know what to do. This is like my second meeting ever in my life. What do I do? And it's like, sit down. You don't know shit. We're just a bunch of drunks here. And I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about,
Ralph.
man. Thanks a lot, Ralph.
See, now, I never had that experience. So after the rehab in Mexico, I went to my first 12-step meeting in the real world, right? Not in a treatment center, right?
Right.
And I'd relapsed already out of the rehab in Mexico, but I went to this to an AA meeting and I shared about dope, which you're not supposed to do in AA meetings.
Right.
And nobody reprimanded me.
Well, that's good. Because, I think that's what it's all about. And, you don't know unless somebody tells you,
And that's what happened. This really nice guy named Mike L., he took me aside after the meeting, and he was like, hey, there's this CA group where you might feel a little bit more comfortable. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he was like, do you need a ride home? And he gave me a ride home.
What was his name?
Mike L.
Shout out to Mike L, man.
Mike L.
There were no Mike L's when I was first going to these meetings. That's why I had a bad taste in my mouth about, and I'm not going to say that I have a bad taste in my mouth about Alcoholics Anonymous, but I have a bad taste in my mouth about the meetings that I went to and the way that I was approached about things.
Yeah.
Because, I would try to work with the sponsor. And of course, grew up a punk rocker, so there's always a little questioning of authority in me, and I was a little shit. And I just remember I got one sponsor, the one person in the room who I thought I could relate to a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm maybe a week into going to meetings ever, first couple weeks that I'm going to meetings, and I'm telling them, I'm like, I haven't had any oxys in a couple of days, I haven't smoked any crack in a couple of days, and he's just like, listen, we're going to say that you were drinking, okay? And I'm like, so I'm going to be working an honest program. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, then why are you going to have me lie about the very thing that I'm here for? Because I could walk past an open bottle of liquor all day long, but that wasn't why I was there. So I wish I would have had a mic in my life back then.
Well, there's a lot of controversy, in the 12-step groups. There's this concept of singleness of purpose, right? That AA is only for alcoholics and CA is only for cocaine and et cetera, et cetera. But I've heard some different perspectives on that. I had a sponsor who at one point, this guy asked me to sponsor him that was like a raver kid, right? He was into dubstep and he never did hard drugs. He just did a lot of ecstasy.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know if I can sponsor him. You know, I wasn't a big ecstasy guy. Like, I've only done it like twice. And he's like, well, I think he knows how to do ecstasy. I think he wants you to help him to not do ecstasy,
Right,
which you might know something
Yeah,
about.
that's a great point. Because, you know, I've had some sponsees who were mostly, you know, alcohol was their thing. And it's like, I get when it's not about the substance, you know, and it's not about the substance. It's about that feeling that you have when you want to quit and you can't. Like
the impending doom.
Right. And I think, you know, what do they say? If you don't understand, keep coming back and you will. Like, I'm so glad that I kept coming back. And now I understand that.
So the 20 times you went to rehab, though, what kind of time span are we talking there that you spent?
7 years.
7 years. Okay. Yeah. So I did like a half a dozen in 6 years, maybe like 8 or 9.
Okay.
And you did 20 in 7 years.
Yes.
So you're an overachiever, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. And it's like, I would go to treatment, and I would say maybe with the exception of 1 or 2 times, every time I went into treatment, I had some hope that this was going to be the last time and that I was going to get something. And I would go in and I would be the therapist's pet. I'd be the one who like did all the work and shared and was really open about my feelings and did everything. And then I would get out, and then it would always be that one more lasted 7 years. Because it would always be like, you know, I was only in treatment for 30 days. If they're telling me that I'm going to count my recovery date, it's the day I get out of treatment. What's one more day? You know, what's one more? And I would do that, and I would get that feeling in my stomach, and I would get, you know, I'd get a pill or some dope or whatever. And I would remember having it in my hands and just shaking. Yeah. Like having it just, oh God. And it's just, oh yeah, this is what I was going to say when I started talking about my sponsor. Okay. So I had the sponsor for a long time, and he would have all this hope for me that like this was going to be the time. So I met him because I went to the same treatment center 19 times. Then I went to Recovery Unplugged once.
You gave them 19 chances?
Well, I didn't have any. It was a state-run facility. It was free. Yeah. So, and I didn't have any insurance. So,
let me ask you. So you got to the point where you would show up, and they were like, Jason.
They knew me. And that's the thing. They would let me in all the time because I was never a problem. I was always super nice. I knew everybody by name. I would always, you know. And then towards the end, they started not wanting me to come anymore because I would be in there. I knew how to work the system. I knew that if I didn't have any money and I went into treatment, I could find somebody with money who I could take out and get high with. Or
So knowing everybody at the rehab, did that feel, was it like Cheers? You know, sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name, or was it kind of like everybody at the rehab knows me?
It was never a shame thing. It was always like I was very gregarious when I would come in. I'd be like, hey, and then I remember one time it was like the holidays, and my mom was going to be like, so are you gonna spend the holidays with us, or are you going to spend the holidays with your family at Bark? Yeah. Which was the treatment center. And it was just like, oh, shit. But anyway, back to my sponsor. So he was doing his H&I, which means hospitals and institutions. He would bring in a meeting to the detox that I was at. So every time I was there, I would see him.
People who are in recovery come into facilities on their own time to be of service and hopefully bring a message of hope to folks who are still in treatment seeking recovery.
Right. So my sponsor, every time he would come in, he would see me there. And after, you know, a couple of times, he'd be like, I'm glad to see you. And then he'd be like, I'm glad to see you. Why don't we hit a meeting when you get out? And I'm like, okay. So then, you know how they say, don't pick up in NA, like, don't pick up no matter what. Don't pick it. And then my sponsor finally took me aside. He's like, I don't think this is going to work for you. He's like, don't pick up no matter what, even if you want to. And I'm like, fuck. And that was the last time I went to treatment that he told me that.
Really?
So then every time I started feeling like I wanted to get high, I would be like, don't pick up no matter what. I heard it so many times that it was just noise. And then I heard my sponsor saying, even if you want to.
So, okay. You know, I'm more AA, you're more NA.
Right.
And sometimes there's some light ribbing, but we've never really chopped it up.
Right. Like, yeah.
So, like, personally, like, I hear don't pick up no matter what. And I'm like, that is dog shit advice. Like, I am incapable of not picking up no matter what. I do not have that skill.
Okay. Understood. Yes. So let's talk about the power of the disease and the power of recovery.
Okay.
So this is my personal theory about it. I'm not a representative of any 12-step program or anything like that. So once you get a little bit of, so say you go to treatment, right?
Yes.
Okay, so say I'm not in treatment. Say
Okay.
I'm out there on the streets.
You didn't go to treatment.
I didn't go to treatment. I'm still out there. I don't want to get high, but I'm dope sick. I'm still caught up in my addiction.
Mhm.
At that point, I have no choice.
Yes.
I'm going to use.
Yes.
No matter what.
Absolutely.
No matter what I have to steal, no matter who I have to rob, no matter what the consequences are, I don't have a choice.
We're going to find a way.
I'm going to find a way.
Yeah.
Once I get a little bit of time in between me and that last one, I'm not physically addicted anymore.
Mhm.
I'm going to treatment. I'm putting a little weight on. I'm starting to feel normal again. I'm using the bathroom normally. There's a point in time when it is a choice.
Yeah.
You know, when there is, or else we wouldn't be in recovery. If there wasn't a point where it becomes a choice anymore, why would we still be here?
Well, okay. So I'm going to give you the AA sort of perspective. And as Jason said, I am also not a representative of AA. But, you know, there's a line in the big book that says at some point in every alcoholic's life, you know, he loses the power of choice.
Right.
Right. And that first step talks about powerlessness around that first drink. Right. So that power is not mine and will never be mine. Right.
Okay.
What I can do is I can choose to work a spiritual program of action, which will relieve me of the obsession to use.
Right. I think we're arguing the same point here, to be
Well,
honest.
I mean, it's the language of choice.
Right.
It's like, I can't not choose to do drugs. I can choose to do some other stuff that will make me not want to do drugs.
So then when you were in your early recovery, let's say your first week out of treatment,
Yes.
this time when you ultimately got sober.
Yes.
Did you have any cravings? Like, was there any moments where you're kind of like,
I don't think so.
no? Okay. So you were, I believe I was in that same place too.
Well, here's something that we did different, right? It's like you went to treatment where you lived, right?
Correct.
Or pretty close.
Correct.
See, I went to treatment about 4 hours away from where I lived and then never went back. So I was in a new town, in a sober house, didn't know anybody except the guys I'd been to treatment with. So like, there's this thing, right? Like where when you know that drugs are not attainable, your disease kind of shuts off for a second. It's just like, at least for me, right? When I'm in treatment, I don't think about getting high because I know it's not an option.
Right.
So it's almost like this little town was an extension of that, to where like I had no clue where to get drugs in this town, and everything around me was new, and I didn't feel bad enough that I had to go seek it out. And so I just didn't.
Okay. So one of my experiences, and where, you know, this will, at least where it pertains to me, how the don't pick up no matter what thing worked in my favor. So I'm at Recovery Unplugged. Big shout out to Recovery Unplugged.
Woo.
I'm at Recovery Unplugged. I am where the residences are for the people still in PHP,
Mhm.
which for those out there, PHP is
Partial hospitalization program.
which means
It's like a day treatment program. You're in treatment, 5 to 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And in the evenings, you go home-ish.
But for most places, you still live. You're still living
In a monitored environment.
in a monitored environment. So
Yes.
I'm in PHP in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where I got high, and my detox is fucking hell. I mean, we're essentially talking about 20 years straight use pretty much every day. You know what I mean? And lots of methadone thrown in there, lots of Suboxone thrown in there. So like my actual detoxing took a lot long than you would hear people detoxing. You know, it was on the longer end of it.
Oh.
You know, nothing special, but it was on the longer end of detoxing.
I was always a 3-4 day guy.
You motherfucker.
Yeah.
See, I always thought that was a myth because the first time I tried to detox, it was off of oxys.
Yes.
And I was about 20 days in, and I'm like, this is never going to end. This is going to be my whole life. And that kept me sick for a long time, but I don't want to get off track too much. So
Okay.
I am
Is
sitting.
there even a track?
Is there a track? What track are you on? Recovery Unplugged. So I am staying in the PHP housing in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which is near the beach. It's a block away from the beach. So it's a really nice area in Fort Lauderdale. The night tech would let me just sit out by the pool because I wasn't sleeping at all. I was maybe sleeping like 30 minutes a day, like if I could doze off, and then I'd get this like ping of not great energy, but like I couldn't sleep.
Alertness.
So he would just let me sit out there by the pool because there was nice ocean breeze and I could see like the palm trees and everything. There was a high-rise condo. I used to get pills from a guy who lived in that high-rise condo that I could see where I was detoxing from.
Ooh.
Half a mile away where the center was, where I would go for
your groups,
for the programming.
Services, yeah.
It's on Sunrise Boulevard. Right across, I could see a 7-Eleven. If I walk 2 blocks that way, I can get oxys. So while I'm up, fucking sick as hell, still throwing up 20 days in, the night tech is letting me sit out there, and all I hear is thoughts in my head. Like, you can just walk around the corner. You can just go. You're not going to feel this way anymore if you go. So I had to have this mantra in my head, which was, don't pick up no matter what, even if you want to. Don't pick up no matter what, even if you want to. Don't pick up no matter what. Because I felt like shit. And I know that there's instant relief right around the corner. I could walk there. I could get this guy to give me 1 pill.
Yeah.
But I knew, and this was really important for my recovery, still is to this day, because I was like, I could leave right now and I'll feel great for a little while. But in the morning, I'm going to know what it's feel like. I'm going to know what it's going to feel like to not be able to go back. Because I came in on a scholarship. You know what I mean? I didn't have money. I didn't have insurance, you know? So it was like, I, for the first time, was playing the tape all the way through, is what they say.
Oh, I hate that one too.
Well,
I hate it too.
I hated them all too until they started to make sense, until I started to live them. Because I can honestly tell you, and it still bothers me when somebody would tell me that recovery is going to be a life beyond your wildest dreams. It was like nails on a fucking chalkboard.
I like that one. That one's true. That one's true.
So are the rest of them.
Hasn't it been?
It has been.
Yeah.
But so are the rest of them. I played the tape all the way through, which just essentially means like I thought beyond how good I'm going to feel in a few minutes. Yeah. Because I knew that was an option for me right then, to physically feel better. Or I could still feel like shit for a few days, a few weeks, whatever it is, and then there's going to be a light at the end of that tunnel, and then this stuff's going to be behind me. And, you know, I'm not like a bullshit kind of guy. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I hear these things too, and I'm like, this fucking bullshit. Like, you know what I mean? But when they start to happen in your real life, and you're just like, motherfucker. Like, so I agree with you.
Yeah.
But when it happens, it's like totally different. It's like,
so of all the recovery cliche phrases, which would you say is your least and most favorite?
Could it be the same one?
I guess. I mean, if you want to
hold
be like
on,
that.
pain ends.
Oh, hope. That one's lame.
It is, but it's also true.
You held on and the pain ended?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's my least favorite and my most favorite.
See, so like you at your core are a punk rocker, right? And I in my core am like a little goth kid who was into punk.
Okay.
Right. So I'm more like pain ends. Like life is a veil of suffering.
You don't want the pain to end.
Okay, so my least favorite recovery cliche is think, think, think.
Yeah.
That one is just stupid.
Especially when they put it upside down and it's like, whoa.
Wait, what?
You've never been in a room where they put it upside down?
That must be a Florida thing.
It must be a Florida thing.
Like, don't think? Or what?
Change the way you think, man.
Change your perspective. The one that I think has had the most impact on me, but confused the shit out of me at one point, was let go, let God. Like, yes. How do I let go?
Yes.
How do I let God? What is God? You know, get all philosophical on it. And it was
right.
That one's probably my favorite, even though it is confusing.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. I used to mock that one. Like, if I was just gonna be like, I'm gonna leave the house with no money, but I'm gonna get high.
Yeah.
And then
let go, let God. Yeah.
Yeah, let go, let God. Yeah. There was this great thing that I always tie back to, like when I'm working with like sponsees. Yeah. Did you ever watch the show Orange is the New Black?
Of course. I read the book too.
Okay, so there was this one episode where it shows one of the characters, I forget her name, but she owns a bodega. And then this guy goes in because he's looking for a job.
Yeah.
And she's like, buy this candle, get a job application, fill it out, put it under the candle, and then you'll get the job.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay. And then he comes back in, freaking out a couple days later. I didn't get the job. I did everything you said. I got the candle. I filled out the application. I put it under the candle. I didn't get the job. And she was like, well, how long ago did you turn in the application? And he was like, oh, he didn't turn in the job application. Yeah.
Well, she didn't specify that. She said, put it under the candle.
Correct.
Yeah. I don't know.
So you have to know where you got to put a little bit of work in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being my point.
All right.
Okay.
Well then.
So do I win? Are the cliches pretty cool?
I don't think there's a win. There's not a win.
I know, because you know what? It's like I think we're arguing the same point, but we're just going to go around and be.
Well, it's like I was talking to a client the other day, right? Which he was in the NA book. He was in the basic text, right? He was reading it, and he was like genuinely excited about it. You know, like I saw him reading. I was like, "Oh, what are you reading?" He was like, "Oh, the basic text." He's like, "Have you seen like, oh, right here it says this, like what?" And I was like, "Oh, like have you ever felt like this when you read a book before?" And he was like, "Well, no." I'm like, "Because you're having an experience with the book."
Right.
Now, I read the basic text long before I ever read the AA book because people were like, "You're a drug addict. Here's the NA book," right? And I read the book and didn't have an experience with it. Like it just didn't resonate with me.
Yeah, and you did have that with the AA literature.
The first time I read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I had there was moments where I put it down and was like, whoa.
Yeah, see?
Whoa. And they do say basically the same thing. I think it's just presentation language.
Dumbed down for the NA book.
I wouldn't say that.
No, but seriously, I needed something that I could say like, I felt like the book was written for me when I read it.
Yeah.
Like, because it was just, and I mean, like, just a couple of pages in, and I'm just like, yes. Yeah. It talks about, like, using when you don't want to use. Yeah. I know it talks about the same thing in Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's nomenclature.
Yeah.
It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
Different windows to the same house.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
We could agree on that.
All right, yeah. Shake hands. Yeah.
So
I feel like there's more, like, AA versus NA things we could like debate about.
Yeah, but it's like I've never been, I've never. So for me, especially after moving to Texas.
Yeah.
So in Florida, where I got clean, it's like most people that we know would be in an NA group. In South Florida, it's just
it's the stronger fellowship.
It's a stronger fellowship there, and here it's not. Yeah. Here it's like I say NA, and people are like, you go to NA? I'm like, yeah, like why? I'm just like, and then coming to Texas, like I get it. Like everything is based around the big book here. And that's just
have you ever been to the Westlake group here in Austin?
I believe I have.
It's a little clubhouse, and they've got this big room for the AA meetings. And
then you go and it's like this.
It's like the size of this room for like 12 people to squeeze in.
Right. Which is, the one thing that I have found it tough working NA and then coming out here and wanting to sponsor guys and trying to sponsor guys. It's like I'm sponsoring a guy who's living in sober living.
Yeah.
Who has to read 30 consecutive days of a reading, and then we go through a workbook to do it. And that's just to work step one.
Yeah.
While his roommate, they were in treatment together. They both have 30 days in recovery. This guy's done the steps 3 times. He's got 4 sponsees. And it's like, how do I compete with that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
I'm not trying to, but I'm just saying, because and I'm not, if I'm working with somebody or somebody has some questions for me and they're like, which is better, AA or NA? I'm like, that's up to you. Yeah. Like, I all I can tell you and all I can help you with is to show you how it worked for me. It's not the only way.
Yeah.
But it's the only way that I know how to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like there's multiple paths into addiction and multiple paths out.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, how many paths do you think there are, Jason?
I'd say at least like 998.
Let's just round it up.
Okay.
An even 1,000.
1,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
1,000 ways in.
How many ways out?
1,000 ways out. We could cut the episode right there.
Yeah.
Make that like the little intro.
Yeah.
But should we? I don't know.
No, let's finish it.
Okay,
Let's
okay,
finish it.
Okay. Where was I
Thank
going?
you.
What?
I was going to say thank you for joining us
Okay.
in our new thing. I think it's about that time, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Thank you to everybody who's listened to this long.
Yeah.
Maybe some of our longtime listeners who are now enjoying us in a new format. You can't gasp and hold up your finger.
I know it's not a live stream anymore. You're not just looking at me through a stream. So okay, I'm gonna let you finish, and then I have one more thing before
I'm gonna let you finish.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you.
So we're adapting to this new format. We hope you are too. It's a little different for us, but we are going to adapt and overcome.
Yeah, we're gonna figure this out, and this show's probably gonna go through a couple more permutations as we dial in on this in-person podcast format.
I'm enjoying it though.
But if you enjoyed this conversation today, if you're interested in things like mental health, addiction, recovery, if someone you loved is struggling with one of those things, if you yourself are struggling, or maybe you're in recovery and want to learn more and hear some different perspectives and some ideas, like this is a spot for you. We are the absolute best mental health, addiction, and recovery podcast in the universe at this point. So
we've made it. It's official.
Yeah. I know phones don't have dials anymore, but or ever really. But don't touch that dial. We'll be back here.
Yeah, we'll be back.
Same toxic time.
Same toxic place.
On Talksicology.